Welcome back. Let's go. So, you got to have a nice little vacation, didn't you?
Did. I already kind of told you this, but we went to Disney World for a week, which is one of my happy places as an autistic, child-free dink in a couple ship. And it heals my inner child. So we were at Disney World for a week. We actually took a friend of mine who I used to work with in consulting, her and her husband, who I've been friends with now for, oh my gosh, like 15 years. And we all get along really well. And so they had never been, as a child, as an adult, anything. And they were just like blown away. And it was so cool because we were able to introduce brand new people to the magic of the Disney parks and like all of that. Of course, prices are outrageous, but you know, privilege also can get you happiness and money and joy, which, we all, by the end of the vacation, we were all like definitely looking at that Disney Vacation Club kiosk and we're just like, is that something reasonable that we could probably do? And like, I'm actually looking into it now because I'm like, if it actually does save us money, we'll do it. But like that's where we're at. But during this whole week, we all had a pact that we weren't going to watch news. We weren't going to be aware of what was going on in the world. We were just going to be in the Disney bubble. And it was absolute magic. I desperately needed it. Like, it's not that I'm like burned out or anything, but once in a while, I just need like a reset of dopamine. As someone with ADHD, autism, that reset is so important. And like, I've found myself the last couple of days really initiating more of those projects I've had to the side. Manuscript that I'm working on with you about mentorship. I worked on that this morning. Unfortunately, I did come back with sickness. But, when you're like looking around the park and you're seeing like little Johnny, like tongue dragging across the guardrail that you hold on to walk up to the Winnie the Pooh ride, of course you're thinking I'm in a what is is it a petri dish? Yeah, like I've always only, when you only read a word and you don't know how it's actually pronounced, and then you're like, man, I probably sound like a Nimrod right now, but
Champagne.
yeah, like champagne. It's like, the person who doesn't know it's Gucci, it's Gucci,
Hmm.
same thing. So, yeah, I was just basically watching germs flying around me as somebody who's very germ conscious and autoimmune at that. So anything that I am around, I will catch. So I just accepted it and here I am, but it still matches the joy that I had last week. Unfortunately, though, like I need to get caught up on some current events as we were talking about, especially related to disability justice and racial inequities. And yeah, hopefully we can kind of connect on that later. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
next
what about you?
episode. For me, uh, Black History Month ended, so my Black History Month series on TikTok and Instagram, where I do like a Black History Month minute and I
Mm-hmm.
talk about lesser known Black history facts or figures, was completed, and I'm very happy to have done it. It was a lot of hard work and
For sure.
consistency, which takes a lot of effort. I'll still be teaching Black History facts, figures, and information all year long, but it's just going to be every day because I do have a job. And it culminated with me doing this freedom run where I did a 5K and earned a
What?
medal. I hate running. I absolutely detest it unless I'm playing basketball. And even then, I run to get on defense. On offense, we'll figure it out. Um, but it was amazing. It was great to be among community. It was a lot of opportunities to connect with the community. It was in Oakland, and it was like a lot of people that had been Black Panthers were helping with it, talking about different mutual aid opportunities. And I think I'm gonna go and volunteer a little bit. They were like, I was like, what's the thing that you guys need
Nice.
most? And they were like, people to volunteer their time. So I think I'm gonna go there. And if it's just moving boxes, helping with food or whatever, I'll do that. I can get into like a reading program to help provide free reading instruction on how to
Mm-hmm.
read and write and with fluency. I would love to do that, and even maybe like provide some of my inner behavior stuff to help with the confidence. So we'll see. And then I on Friday it was simultaneously my younger brother's birthday, so happy birthday to him, and it was Pokemon Day. So
Yes, please
we
inform.
yeah, so Pokemon Day is every February 27th because February 27th, 1995 was when, or maybe 94, was when the first Pokemon game came out in Japan. Pokemon's Leaf Green and Fire Red. And, I didn't plan on talking about Pokemon, but I'm wearing a Mew shirt, so I might as well rock it. Um, but yeah, they announced the new starter Pokemon for and the new Gen 10, the new series games, and I'm super excited. I always pick the water type ever since the first game. I've always picked the water type. I always will pick the water type, and that's just the way the game goes. My younger brother has always picked the fire type. He will always pick the fire type, and that's the game how the game
Awesome.
goes. And then we'll battle each other. I'm 33 now, and been doing it ever since the big fat Game Boys that were like
Yep.
not necessarily black and white, but black and like green.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that takes me back. I remember when all of it launched. I was probably like in late elementary, starting middle school. I remember all of those being a huge deal. And then when I worked at GameStop, we were still bringing in Game Boy games as trade ins, and we were doing like Game Boy Advance. And because there were definitely games that were more rare that we would give more money for. But it seemed that we never got those traded in, and people would get like really mad at me about the resale prices. I remember it kind of was like a turnoff to me to ever like get involved with the Pokemon games. Same with like the sports games and all that. Like, I just
Yeah.
have such a bad like relationship with some of it, but my spouse is super into Pokemon, or was. He used to play the card game. And
Hmm.
I'm not even really sure if he played the video games. I need to kind of talk with him about that. Like, I don't know that about him. I've been with him like 8 years now, and how do I not know this about you? But he wore his Pokemon shirt to Disney World on Friday, and everyone kept like, "Oh, happy Pokemon Day!" And he was just as confused as I was, so I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, no, it's a whole thing, and I think
It's
that it's
amazing.
cool that he did that. I've also played the card game. I feel like during that time when those card games came out, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon
Yes.
trading card game, and Yu-Gi-Oh, like it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're a boy, like you're
Yeah,
really into it.
it was huge.
Yeah, and one thing that I really liked, I was like on TikTok scrolling, and I was like looking at this father and his daughter, and his daughter was playing Pokemon maybe for one of the first times, and then she was like sounding out because there's no voice acting, so she just had to read everything. So she had to sound out the sentences and the words, and then she had to interpret what they were saying so that she can be able to progress. And then there's a little bit of math involved too, especially in the trading card game. So like I remember as a kid, I was trying to convince my parents to like let me get Pokemon cards and the games because like, oh, there's reading and math and all this stuff to be able to be successful. And
Amazing.
evidence shows that if you play games like Pokemon or even just video games in general, you have better abilities to have good problem solving skills
Hmm.
because video games you have to lose, try again.
Yeah. Well, and doesn't it like delay any sort of progression of Alzheimer's and dementia? I'm pretty sure I've like read that before. But
Yeah.
yeah, playing video games and keeping your mind active and flexible as opposed to less rigid. But that can also account for other activities. Like, I've read that about crocheting and knitting and like needlework and stuff like that. And so I do all of the things. So I should, in theory, be okay as I age. But then again, who knows? But yeah, play video games, play card games, do all the things.
I
Embrace
agree.
your inner child.
I agree, and I think that when we get to the old folks' home and the assisted living facilities, I think that we're gonna have like video games and we're gonna be
For
playing, having a
sure.
great time. It's gonna be like college dorms all over again.
That's actually something to look forward to because it's like as long as I'm around people I get along with, I'm good because, the activities would be more focused on our I really love being a millennial. I feel that I was born in the right era. I feel that I had enough technology to like appreciate it, but also like I know I say this with like utmost sincerity. I know had I been born in a much, much earlier time period, I probably would have been burned at the stake for being like a witch or just being weird, or I would have been cast out from society. And I love that, like, now I live in a time where, in some ways, it's embraced. I was considered like a manic pixie dream girl type in high school and college and stuff like that. And, that was considered rewarded. However, I would have been blamed for all sorts of things. Like the Salem witch trials stick out to me because it was literally hearsay. And it's like, y'all know, like, these girls that you accused were just probably neurodivergent, right? Because, like, everything I'm reading about them, it all lines up, and here y'all,
Or even if they were
murdered
just
them.
non-compliant, you know what I mean?
Right!
Just saying no, having an opinion.
How dare you? How
I
dare
mean,
you
like,
have a perspective?
yeah, those simple things I feel like could have gotten you got at that time, especially
Oh,
with
for
those
sure.
individuals who had so much power just with that hearsay. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
She said she was gonna boil some frogs and put a spell on us. Burn her. What? if she floats when you put cement on her legs, she's a witch. But if she doesn't and she dies, she's not.
It
What?
makes me think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. What floats in water? Really tiny pebbles. Wood. A witch. My gosh. I need to watch that again. It's so. Like, I'm not a fan of John Cleese any longer, but, that's a classic movie. John Cleese is just throwing it out there. I've kind of canceled him for his anti-trans rhetoric. He's up there with J.K. Rowling. So if you pay attention to that sort of stuff, look up John Cleese's harmful statements on the trans community, and yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean,
Holy Grail's classic.
yeah, yeah. And it's tough. It's interesting to see like what people will and won't engage with based on an individual, like trying to separate the art from the artist
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't really work for me personally, because a lot of their art, like a lot of the problematic stuff is in their art. Like if you look at J.K.
Mm-hmm.
Rowling, like look at the way she named her Asian character. Look at like all of these like very
Right.
minute things that are written, and you can't they can't divorce themselves from their ideology when it comes to their creating their art. And I definitely think that, social media has a part to play in how much we know about those individuals. So it's about also like being intentional on social media and looking at what, people are saying.
Right. I think that's such a good conversation to have generally. And I think about that in terms of I have this conversation with my students a lot where it's like you engage in cancel culture. And I hate the term cancel culture because there's like a stigma to it now. And it's like, rightfully so, people are canceled for very good reasons. And I don't think it's excessive personally. I think it's rightfully so. I have yet to see something that I've been like, man, I don't agree with that one. But, I could eat those words eventually. But I don't think we talk about that enough in the field of behavior analysis. I don't feel like we talk about that enough in the field of, education or psychology. I will say that from what I have seen and heard from varied professionals, with all sorts of levels of degrees in different areas of study, is that in the field of behavior analysis, there's a lot of allowance and a lot of enabling that happens that doesn't happen in other fields. And I find that so interesting because it's like we have this elitist view of the discipline as it is, where we come into the mindset historically more so probably, but I came into practice around 2011. Oh my God, I'm so old. I came into practice around 2011, and then the mentality was ABA is superior, single subject design is the only way, everything else doesn't do science right, blah, blah, blah. So it was this very elitist tone to everything that we did. And now it's become more of like a collaborative, concentrated effort to include more disciplines and perspectives, but we're still not isolating those people and those ideas and those concepts that are problematic in the way that I think we should be. Maybe it's just me, but to that point.
I agree. I agree. And I was thinking like when you look at what canceling somebody is, I think about it like if we think about it in behavior analytic terms, it's withholding or removing reinforcement or attention or
Mm-hmm.
money from an individual
Yeah.
based upon their behavior. That is totally valid.
Yeah.
If somebody slights me, I'm less likely going to engage with, interact with, pay for their services or
Right.
their produced goods. Like that's just simple. Like I don't see why I see why it has become this thing that's been, politicized in like, the right. It's like you can't cancel, but it's like the right, they cancel a lot of people for a lot of things. They just don't situated in that language. And when it is situated in that language, you say, "Oh, that's not canceling." They move the goalpost, they describe it differently, or what have you. But I mean, it's simply if we look at it behavior analytically, it makes total sense, and it's been happening for a long time. There's just a common parlance vernacular for what it looks like now that has been polarizing and politicized.
Yeah. I love that breakdown because, you would treat a learner in your care that you're providing a treatment plan for or whatever with the same contingencies. You would say, hey, I'm going to withhold the reinforcement for this. But yet, at your state conferences, you're platforming these people who have said bad things in the past. Or I also think that within the field, there's also probably a lack of communication and a lack of awareness of some of these things. So, as a part of Nirava, we call out some of the problematic practices, and it's amazing to me how few of people know about these things. To me, they're kind of common knowledge because I see the patterns. And pattern recognition is very strong with me, and I'm also very mindful about how I spend my money, spend my resources, provide attention to, and cite in my works that I do with students and on my own. But it seems that others don't have that perspective. And I think if we could take that same lens and apply it to the field, oh my gosh, think of how much further we could advance and progress. And it's just astounding to me of how few people really know about these things. But also, part of the capitalist structure of keep them busy so they can't question things comes into play here. And I think the field really does an exceptional job of keep them busy, keep them burned out. Then they won't question it, and they can't question it because they don't have the time or the energy to do so.
Absolutely,
I'm
absolutely.
so
And then
snarky, sorry.
no, no, no. You're 100% correct. I agree with you 100%. And I think that one of the things that people often worry about that also maybe it's not talked about enough is ways for individuals who commit harm to be able to um, provide restitution to
Yes,
the communities,
agree.
individuals who have been harmed. You know what I mean? It's not like unless it's like super egregious people who are committing harm, the P Diddy's, the people who are, just, so far gone. But if it's
Yeah.
these other individuals, how do they come back into the community? What steps do they need to take to be able to not be as canceled or not be canceled to be able to come back? Because there has to be a path, I think, because it's like you can't just be like, oh, you did one wrong thing, you're gone forever, I hate you forever, you're going to be
Right.
hated by the community forever, you're no longer welcome, because that's not how behavior works either. You know what I mean? You commit a behavior, there's a consequence, so then you do a different behavior, there should be a different consequence. So how do we how do we set guidelines and expectations for restitution when somebody commits something? And I think that that also doesn't mean that you get to do one thing and then you're welcome back with open arms as well.
Right.
Because once that behavior has been noticed in your behavior repertoire, it doesn't immediately become eliminated with some punishment or withholding of reinforcement. It's always in your repertoire. And there's a not, it could get to not to near zero levels of probability of it occurring. That's near zero. That's not zero. So we have to have those discussions about what can the individual do, how can they provide restitution, how can we stop this from happening again, how can the people who were harmed feel like there's a sincere apology and sincere reclamation, all these things that I don't think that behavior analysis even knows about. Like, it needs to take into like restorative justice communities to really understand how to do that. And like you said before, I think that you were getting at behavior analysis has historically not played in the sandbox well with other
No,
professional
not at all.
institutions. And it's like those institutions have been around much longer than we have.
Yeah. So ultimately, like, we're the small little thing coming in. Oh, we know how to do all this stuff, but we actually don't. Like, maybe we should step back and listen and see what's going on. And I love where this conversation has kind of gone because it's summarized a lot of what we've experienced as social justice platform. So recently, we had called out an individual who had engaged in some problematic behavior. We just put out the facts and said, here's what happened. This person found out that we had posted the information about them, and they had basically went through a whole lot of smear campaign trying to get all of the information taken down, report us to ethics, try to get me fired, do all of these things. And ultimately, this person had I'm going to call them a collective of enablers or flying monkeys if you do any sort of like abuse terms. So, the flying monkeys are the people that will listen to an abuser and say, oh, you're the one that's actually the problem because you're spreading this and blah, blah, blah. Why can't you just let it go? And it's like, but restitution has not happened yet. And well, what do you expect from them? Well, at minimum, if something happens and it becomes public, you owe an apology to the public and you owe them a description of how you're changing that behavior. Now, if things happen in private and they're between you and another person, you handle that with that person. Something public, and I'm talking this was national news. National news, you also owe that to the public. Now, you don't have to necessarily give all the setting events, like if it was a medical event or like a situation, like I'm very understanding about disability because, I know a lot of people that go through very challenging situations where they do not act in a way that is normally reflective of their own values. In these situations, we could talk about different occurrences of like psychosis. We could talk about manic episodes. There are many different setting events that can enable a person to act in a manner that doesn't align with those values that we know that they have and generally demonstrate. You don't necessarily have to go into that detail. We don't necessarily need all of that, but just how am I going to move forward? How am I going to correct the wrongs that I've done that everyone is already aware of? What can I do to advocate? I see it as a missed opportunity is what I see it as primarily, because it's like you have this voice that clearly everyone's paying attention to. And if you don't use that as an opportunity to promote growth and opportunities, what are you doing? You're perpetuating even more harm. So it's like you owe that to people. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it.
I agree, and I think that there's an important part of self-reflection. Like, there, anybody can do harm.
Absolutely.
Anybody can do
And we
harm.
all do.
And we all do harm. Everybody will do harm. Being able to recognize that and then figure out how to not only apologize appropriately, but resolve it and then make committed actions to the communities that were harmed so that they understand that you recognize the harm and you want to provide restitution and you're describing the ways in which you're going to change your behavior to improve outcomes moving forward. That's important. It's not super hard. And I think that if
Right.
it is hard, you should be able to talk with people, hopefully not just the yes people, but the people that are going to give you clear advice on how to move forward. And too many people have been able to go too long without ever having to recognize the harm that they've done, admit to the harm that they've done, look at the victims and see the hurt that they've done, and then try to resolve or apologize or any of those things. They just continue being a wrecking ball through multiple people's lives, and then they fail upward and become something like, I don't know, the president of the United States. So when the environment rewards harm, you're going to get harmful people that are going to harm on global levels. And that's the society in which we live that is largely propped up on white supremacy culture and capitalism. And when you name those things, the problem is the algorithms will suppress your content because they're like, oh, they're talking
I've
about
noticed
that. We
this.
don't want people to know about that or talk about that or identify that as an issue. So let's just make sure that that gets fewer views and attention so that we could just distract them with bread and circuses.
Why do you have to make everything about race and capitalism? I'll just say it now, because so that no one
Because it
else has
is.
to.
And it's
Exactly.
that deep. And if you can't recognize it, then you need a book.
Oh, totally. It's just, oh my gosh, that's like my least favorite question ever now is why do you make everything about that? Um, just shut up and read. Like
Yeah.
it's all.
Open a book. I'm asking you to open any book other than your Bible.
Literally any other book. It's so funny. Like I read a nonfiction, or I'm sorry, I read a fiction book for the first time in like ages. So we had a conversation about what we're reading last time, and I was kind of cracking up that all of my pie graph in story graph is just like depressing, informative, angry, like all these terms
Yeah.
that basically summarize how I feel most of the time about society. So I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, it was her only novel.
Yeah.
Feminist prose to the max. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this woman was saying this stuff like in this novel years and years ago. It was so good. And because it's always been there. It's always a thing. And it, like, I don't know, just reading through it, I felt like really empowered, but also sad because I was like, man, and I'm talking about feminism at this point, but I know like other areas of intersectionality are considered as well with like race and disability and all of that as well. So this is a theme around all different intersectional demographics, but specifically talking about feminism, like we've been talking about this for so long, and like we're still not seeing. I mean, we've repealed Roe versus Wade, we've, taken away women's rights, and all of this stuff after all of this progress made in the '70s, in particular for women's rights. It's so saddening as well to think about, and it's like, man, what would authors in the past who've been saying these things for so long think about where we are today and social justice and all of that? It's sombering.
Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
even to add to that, the fact that they're making so voting rights for women are being revoked as well, in the sense
Gosh,
that if
yeah,
your name is different on your
I did
ID
see
than
that.
your birth certificate, then we have a problem and you can't vote. And it's like, well, if you get married and you take your husband's last name, then all of a
Right.
sudden those things are different. So it's like, and
I'm
it's
so glad
intentional.
I
It's
never
not like,
changed my name.
yeah,
So glad.
and the harm is intentional. The harm is the point.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just the people in power are the worst, and it's just yeah, it's bad.
Going back to like talking about like the culture of ABA and stuff like that, I kind of thought of something else too. One of my biggest pet peeves when I was a consultant was how practitioners would come in and say, oh, well, they need a consequence. They need a consequence. And so that would just commonly be a phrase that would be said. A lot of people normalize punishment, for instance, or they say, oh, well, there's got to be a consequence for that action. And so, when we do any sort of like toilet training protocol, We might do simple correction. There's absolutely nothing wrong with restoring the environment to the original state because that's something I would have to do anyway. That's something I need to be held accountable for regardless of my disability. If I make harmful statements towards somebody, I need to be accountable for that, regardless of whether I was informed or not. Same thing, like if I don't pay a bill because I got distracted because of ADHD, that doesn't mean the bill consequence goes away. It means my electricity might get shut off. It means I might have like a late fee or something associated with it. The same goes here, where it's like we don't generalize that in the field, where it's like, okay, but we always want a consequence, right? We always want some sort of effect. We want to reinforce or we want to punish a behavior or extinguish or maintain, whatever that might be. But yet we don't actually use those consequences when it comes to those larger scale individuals. Is it fear? Is it because, like, man, I don't want to be called out about this? Man, I don't want to be reported to the BACB. Let me tell you, it's not as scary. I've been reported to the BACB. It's not as scary as you might think. I'm still here. I'm still certified. I'm questioning if I want to maintain that certification. But, like, if you're not doing the wrong thing, you have nothing to fear. Nothing.
And from what I understand, they typically don't do much. Like, I haven't heard many instances in which they should have done something and they did something.
Right.
Usually I hear the opposite,
100%.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
in the structures and the systems in which they exist, what could you expect? But
Very escape maintained behavior on the BACB's part.
exactly. It's like, oh, it's not up to us.
Right. And that was one of the reasons that the person that we had called out from Nuraba was basically saying, well, the BACB investigated and, found no cause or no issue or whatever. And it's like, well, that's great for the BACB and great for you, but that doesn't mean that society has accepted that. But, maybe people don't know. Maybe you should tell them.
It kind of reminds me of like, oh, the police are going to investigate themselves. Okay. Like, great. I
Right.
expect something very important to happen where they get the consequences
Yeah,
they
totally.
deserve. Let me
Totally.
on that one. No, no.
It's
The CIA
yeah.
investigated itself and found no harm. Is what's going to
It's like the Epstein files right now. It's like, okay, but who's actually investigating that? Oh, the people who are in the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Oh, well, imagine that. Nothing's being done, but I can't imagine why.
His name appears in the Epstein files more than Harry Potter's name is in his own series of 7 books, or 7 or 6 books. I don't forget. It's
His
wild.
own self-titled series.
You're a wizard, Harry. Sorry.
You have to laugh because it's just so ridiculous that you get to that point of like, this can't be true, that all you can do is laugh. And I don't think any of this is funny, I want to be clear, but like sometimes I'm so uncomfortable with the truth that I have to laugh because it's like a coping thing for me. Autistic people don't always show the emotions the way you think that they're going to. I laugh when I'm uncomfortable, and it's gotten me in some situations before where it's not great. So I'm laughing because of my discomfort, because I just literally don't know what else to do.
I feel the same. Like, I was thinking, like, even if you think about the way that people in applied behavior analysis, sometimes I feel like they don't use the actual science enough when it comes to things
No.
outside of just people with disabilities. Like,
Right.
for universities,
Totally.
if you run a program in ABA, shouldn't you be utilizing ABA throughout the program with your students, with your learners, with your faculty? Like, you know what I mean? And even like, let's scope out and be like, there's never been anybody, from what I've read, that's ever written a behavior intervention plan for white supremacy culture. Because one, they can't even identify what that is, and two, like how it affects everybody on every single level, and how it's like, oh well, why can't we have universal health care? It's like, okay, well, some white people that have money don't want black people to have health care. Like, it's literally that. And we're like, oh no, that's not it. It's okay. Well, go ahead with your talking points, but it's literally that, and we can see it throughout history, and that's why it costs money to go to college, because it used to be free, but then when black people can start going to college, they made it to be
Can't
costly.
have that.
No,
Can't
no.
can't can't have the black people going to college. My God.
I mean, so it's just it's embedded in the culture. So to be able to do a critical analysis of how it affects consequences and environments, and then try to change those things, I haven't seen it done, and I'm like, damn, well, people probably haven't even thought about that honestly, because the way that you and I would read an article are different than a way that a lot of people I've noticed would read an article, because we'll
Hmm.
notice things that'll stand out to us where other people might
Yeah.
just read over it. And that's due to our environmental history, our positionality, and all those things. And I think that that's why it's so important for people who are autistic, who have ADHD, who are Black, Latino, Latinx, what have you, especially people of indigenous communities, to come into the field to be able to give their perspective and utilize their identities to help improve the science, because the science has been created by and honestly for the white cis hetero, a lot of times male.
Yeah. It's I think about these things a lot where it's like, man, I think about it as like the 6 degrees of separation, where it's like everything is so interlocked with those contingencies that it's really hard to kind of come up with solutions to them because they're so embedded. So if we talk about, the example that you were referring to as far as like, well, black people going to college, well, anybody can go to college. Well, you have to have money to go to college because now you have to pay a significant amount of money because it's just going up. Tuition prices are just increasing and housing prices are increasing and blah, blah, blah. So you have to have all the money to be able to do these things. Well, most people are going to prioritize a living situation. And if housing prices are increasing, then you can't afford to buy your own house. You may have to rent. You get stuck into that cycle for the rest of your life because you can't get out of it. Well, why don't they have money? Well, let's talk about job opportunities and let's talk about equitable labor and all that sort of thing. Well,
Generational wealth and
exactly. And then, well, when we go back, okay, well, but they don't have the education to get those. And so, like, it becomes this, like, I don't know, people might say, well, that's just a whole bunch of excuses, but it's like, it's so the way everything is set up that you would just have to almost wipe the slate entirely clean and start fresh. And I'm going to say the S word, socialism, with a socialist approach where everybody is equitable, everybody gets a piece of the pie. You would almost have to start over from scratch. Like, it's really hard to wrap my brain around something that could really undo those systems of oppression because they're so embedded.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think that you hit on a lot of points. That's why I'm an abolitionist, because when it comes to abolitionist practices, we believe that it's like, okay, think of it like a plant. If the plant is dying, what do you do? And if it's like corroding other plants around it, you dig out the plant,
Get
you
out.
plant new
Yep.
seeds, and then you grow that. That's abolition. Then we talk about anarchy, and you know what I mean. An anarchist system, you have to tear down the problematic system, and then there's like this thing called Afro pessimism, which I need to get more into because I'm not too learned about it. And
I
at
haven't heard
first, it
about that.
didn't. Yeah, at first to me, because when I was in this like uh this, I want to say it was like this talk or whatever with some people, uh and Dr. Angela Y. Davis was there too at the university, and someone was talking about Afro pessimism, and they were explaining it, and the way they were explaining it to me, because I haven't done the reading, I was like, how is this useful? Because it's just like pessimism for me. What I was coming up with is pessimism about the future based upon what we expect as Black people to be afforded in the current structures. And I was like, okay, well, how is this useful? You know what I mean?
Right.
So all of these things, trying to understand it, it's like you said, it's clear that we need a society that is fair. When it comes to capitalism, capitalism literally requires the exploitation of an underclass to prop up individuals who don't do nearly as much work but get most of the wealth. That's literally all it is. And because the American system has been so good at propagandizing what capitalism is and what they say communism, socialism, Marxism, which are three different things, is. they've done a good job of, like, for lack of a better term, brainwashing the American populace to believe that capitalism equals good and democratic, which is not true. And then socialism, Marxism, communism is bad and is going to get everybody's food and nice things taken away. Like, oh, you're a socialist. Why do you have a house? Why do you have belongings because you're a socialist? It's like, okay, do you understand that I'm living under a capitalist structure and I have to operate under such? So I either die or do this. It's not an
Right.
option that I'm opting into.
Literally life or death, homelessness or having a home, like literally all of these things. And it's like, well, in order to get the voice out there, I have to maintain my stability. And the more disadvantaged you are, the harder it is to get your voice out there. So, like, we talk about this a lot with like disability justice, where we only have so many spoons in the day and we only have so much energy. You know, we have flare ups, we have all these different things that set us back. And it's within that space. And there are challenges with all of the intersectional identities for, you know, advocacy and all of that. Within disability is where I can kind of speak to the most, where it just becomes such a difficult thing to overcome and be able to get out there, and then people fight you on it, and then it takes more energy, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's really hard. Don't go into advocacy if you're not very passionate about it, is kind of the key here, because it's there's very little reward but a whole lot of hard work.
I agree. I agree. And also, like, you have to, like, take breaks and, rest as
Yeah.
resistance, you know what I mean? And figure out when you have the spoons to be able to support other individuals. Um, I wanted to talk about something real quick, that I
Yeah,
wanted to
shoot.
bring up to you, and I wanted to see what you think about it and then kind of put a few different lenses on it.
Okay.
Um, so I'm
Should I be
gonna
scared?
share my screen. No, no, not allowed. Not at all. Allow to share window, and then I'll share this window. Okay,
By the
so this
way,
is the
also this Afro pessimism stuff looks legit. I need to read more into this. So thank you for bringing it up. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So this is one of the things that I came up with, that I came across recently, and it's about, the Vernon doctrine of black media avoidance. And it basically says that no oppressed group, but particularly black people, should look to mass-produced media created under capitalism and white supremacy to find authentic representations of themselves. The doctrine holds that all mass media, no matter how well intentioned, carries built-in distortions because in order for any creator to access a large platform, compromises with the existing power structure are inevitable. Those compromises don't just disappear, they get embedded into the final product, shaping stories that get told and how they get told. And the part that gets tricky is that the more talented the creator, the harder those compromises are to spot. So I'm gonna stop sharing. And some of the ways that we see that is in the ways that, like, sometimes black characters are portrayed in movies, and, like, I feel like it's not authentic. Like, I wouldn't. Why would any black person do that? Or in the instance of, like, in, like, the MCU and Marvel, it's like, how come, like, the black superheroes don't, like, communicate and talk more? And it seems like they're just, like, completely disconnected, whereas they would probably typically, like, have more of a communal sense. Like, I have this picture of, like, all the black superheroes at a cookout because we have this, like, sense of community. So, like, I would see the new Captain America and the Black Panther and everybody, like, they would probably be more in a communal setting. And then, like, even in some instances on, like, centers, and even when done well, there are certain instances where it's like, I don't know if that would have happened. So I was thinking, have you seen maybe in people that are portrayed as autistic or people portrayed as having ADHD, and you maybe have been like, I don't know if that's a accurate representation of
Oh
an
yeah,
individual like that? Yeah.
totally. Yeah, it's very commonplace in any identity to experience that disconnect. We talk about that a lot with. I don't know if you're familiar with Sia, the music artist,
Hmm.
and kind of the controversy with Sia. So to kind of go back really far on this, Sia had taken Maddie Ziegler. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but she was on featured on Dance Moms. Very talented performer, child dancer, protege under Sia. So she basically took her under her wing, and basically put her in a role for one of her music videos where she portrayed an autistic individual. Maddie is not autistic, which is a big problem to start with. But not only are you kind of putting someone into that role, what's the term for that? I can't remember. So somebody disabled playing, or somebody not disabled playing a disabled character, somebody not of like a specific race. We would historically associate that with blackface, but I can't remember what the modern equivalent term of that is for like disability. So I apologize on that. My brain is still not quite where it needs to be after returning from vacation. So non-disabled portraying disabled, and portrayed an autistic girl as just a very stereotyped character. Like, it's painful to watch. Allegedly, they had consulted with autistic persons and done all this, but the same criticism has been coming around with like the new autistic Barbie, which I happen to have right here. She always helps me work. She has her noise canceling headphones, and then she has her little fidget spinner, all of her bracelets to match me, but comfortable T-Rex dress because I didn't like the original dress she came in. This is more of something I would wear. So like a lot of autistic people in this situation have said, well, she doesn't represent me. And it's like, yes, when we talk about race, when we talk about gender, when we talk about disability, when we talk about religion, whatever, there can be a spectrum still that exists within those. So on the one hand, it can be a problem if it's a stereotyped depiction, if it is paired with harm. We've talked about the stigma associated with certain terms. So, like, if I say that someone is the black sheep, why do we say that black is bad? If we talk about someone being an idiot, well, that's a term that people used to use for individuals in insane asylums. And, it's continued to perpetuate as bad. Hilary Duff was saying this in the early 2000s when people were calling bad things gay in that commercial. And I don't know if anybody remembers, but
I remember. Pepperidge
yeah,
Farm.
it depends on how it's depicted. And so, like with Autistic Barbie, I see it as positive because we have a Barbie that's not blonde haired, blue eyed, who does have flexibility with an AAC device that I don't have because we are both vocal. We are not alternative speakers, but we do fidget with fidget spinners. We do wear noise canceling headphones and they match. So, you know, as long as the spectrum is kind of like accounted for and understood, but it's not done in a stigmatizing and harmful manner, there's a fine line between the two. I don't know if that's kind of what you've seen in certain communities as well.
Yeah, no, I've seen certain things because I think that it's not only about being represented, which I think it's also about what's the representation look like.
Right.
Because like in comics right now, in DC Comics, there's a thing, DC So White. The hashtag DC So White is kind of starting to try to get trending because it's
Awesome.
been 1,112 days since the last time DC had a comic book that had a black lead that was in the main universe that was an ongoing series. So it's been a long time since they pushed a black lead character. And then they had this comic that is like about a black contingent of characters. And it's like, okay, if this comic does well, we'll make more of this. But then it leaked early. Comic books never leak early, but people are saying that they intentionally leaked it early so that it wouldn't do well, so they wouldn't have to come through on their promise to make this. But also, like when I
Oof.
read the story, I love the story except for one part where basically Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman come in to try to help the black characters, and they're like, "Well, we could try to help President Lex Luthor not stop. I mean, we could stop him, but we're gonna leave it up to you." I mean, and basically the whole thing was like all the black characters had to stop being superheroes because President Lex Luthor said stop being superheroes. But everybody else gets to keep being superheroes and everybody else gets to keep doing their thing. So it's like, I love the fact that we're getting these characters again, and a lot of the story was great. But why is it like they tried to explain like why we haven't seen these characters? And I know they had to come up with a reason, but it's just like, I feel like, why would they make this decision, and why would even Superman make this decision? Like, none of these characters are making a legitimate decision, so we have to make a reason as to why these characters aren't getting shown more. And it's like the white supremacy and the white supremacy is seeping into the comics. The real world white
Of
supremacy is
course.
seeping into the fake world comics so I mean, it's just,
Right.
it's so deep. So it's like, it's just, we can't have nice things because of this, or at least,
Why why do you make everything about race, Jared? Jeez.
goes back to that.
Every time. I'm not as full disclosure, I don't do superhero things. I think they're cheesy, but I respect like the cool ones. Like I love Deadpool, for instance. But I don't see him as a superhero. I see him as like
Oh
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then who's the other one? The Wakanda. God,
Black
it's
Panther.
Marvel. Black Panther. I like Black Panther. I did go see that movie and I really enjoyed it. I was like, wow, this superhero is actually kind of cool. But DC, I've seen some of the Batman movies, and obviously I've seen like the Joker movies and stuff like that. But I've never cared for Superman. Like he annoys me. Like he's too patriotic, and like Captain America too. Like I can't stand the ones that are propagandized like that. And I see through the BS. Like I see Captain America as like a way to indoctrinate children and make them patriots. Like the freaking Pledge of Allegiance every day in schools. Like I see it as the same freaking thing. But maybe that's me looking too deep into it. But I just always felt uncomfortable about that. And DC always gave me that ick vibe. The one thing I did like was Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah,
And that's it.
a few things. One, the comic book heads will get on me if I don't mention this. In the comics, Captain America has gone against America many
Oh,
times because he felt like they were being racist. They were being, what is it called
okay.
when you're anti-people?
Me? Robin? Yeah.
Well, no, I forget the term, but basically, like
Antisocial?
no, not antisocial, but like you're anti other people, like other people in the world. I forget what the term is, but basically, he's gone against America many times to say that like, no, this is right. What America, the government is doing is wrong. So he's been
Mm-hmm.
supered up on that.
Okay.
Superman has also gone against America a lot of times, and he said that he's not a weapon for America specifically, and
Okay.
he's there
I
for
stand
the
corrected.
world. I mean, but you wouldn't hear about a lot of those stories because a lot of those stories are buried beneath a lot of the
But they're not the
overt.
movies.
Well, the last Superman movie. If you watch that, that was amazing. I will say,
Okay.
like, it showed
Good to know.
a different form of masculinity that's not seeped in patriarchy. That's seeped in like helping the little guy. That it's literally like there's an analogy for Israel Palestine that like is pretty clear, especially for the timing that it came out. Highly recommend it. And then one other thing, Batman is, I would say, a big problem because one, how do you have all those billions and you don't really help the Gotham as a
Right.
city? But also, people
Right.
say that he shows his the bottom part of his face so that the police can know that he's a white man, so they won't
Oh
shoot
my
him.
gosh. That's wonderful.
But
But it's so on target because, like, what a freaking whiny. I've always seen Batman as this whiny guy who can't let shit go. It's like, oh man, my family's dead. Okay, you know what?
that's part of it. Yeah,
Eventually, you're probably going to have to heal emotionally and figure out a way other than vengeance.
and that's the problem with comic books is like they're perpetually ongoing. They to be able to sell Batman is like they have so many different Batman like comics types of
Yeah, there's a
they have
lot.
Batman and Robin, they have Batman Solo, they have Batman Inc., they have Detective Comics. So they have all these different runs of Batman comics, but to keep him going and writing the story, he can never resolve those conflicts. Whereas like in anime, they'll have an anime just go through the series and then it's done. These story the story for these characters are done. Whereas in American comics, they have to never be done. There always has to be a problem, a big bad, an issue, so that, they even took away Spider-Man's marriage because they said that Spider-Man can't be happy. And all of the readers hated it. And to this day, it's called One More Day, I think, the storyline. It's one of the most hated comics in all of superhero comics because none of the readers wanted that. But to tell the story, they did that, So it's, yeah.
I think you just like summarized why I've never gotten into like comics because I love concluding. I love resolution. And the fact that it can't be resolved, it can't be concluded. Like we have to keep going because money and because we have to keep people interested. Why not just make new superheroes? Why not just so yeah, I don't like that sort of like ongoing we never get any sort of closure on anything.
And to be fair, that's really particular to the main two, DC and Marvel, like Image, who created The Walking Dead. Like they often have resolutions. Image, who created
Absolutely.
Saga, we're still waiting for that resolution. They often have resolutions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And other smaller like Boom Studios and stuff like that. There's this one that you
Wow.
love called The Wicked and the Divine, which is
I
just
actually have heard that. I've
yeah,
heard I would
yeah.
really like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. The art is amazing. Like it's just, especially if you're an angsty teen or if you have a
Yeah.
spirit of an
Which
angsty teen, that is like perfect comic right there. But a lot of times those big tent ones, it's like, oh, we got to keep on going. We got to keep the money maker
right.
making money. So
I feel that I do the perpetual eye roll anytime a new superhero movie is announced because I'm like, you need another Superman movie, you need another Batman movie. Like, why are we doing this? Why can't we just like come up with new like women or BIPOC superheroes and like expand on the universe instead of just like limit the universe to these ongoing limited depictions of what a superhero actually is. I will say that as a Disney adult, I respect Marvel more, but there's still a lot of problems there.
yeah,
I'm not involved in it. So I'm kind of like going through the framework of like my favorite media, and I'm thinking that okay, like the things that I've not always loved don't have resolution. And so I think that that's so interesting that I'm like now
yeah.
getting that light bulb moment of like, okay, so now I can like tell people when they recommend like a show or a movie or something, is there a conclusion? No, I'm not watching it because I know I'm going to hate it because I need closure.
So that makes me ask: did you see the movie Inception?
I did.
Did you hate it?
I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I respect what it was. I could see why people really love it. Um, it wasn't my favorite.
Because the ending was very ambiguous. It was kind of left up
Yeah,
to interpretation. Is the top still spinning or whatever? That's at least what
right.
I remember from this. Got to be decade old movie at this point.
Oh my gosh. It is.
Yes,
Oh,
we're
I'm
old.
so old. I'm like the crypt keeper.
But movies that like, I mean, of course, there's movies that you can just turn your brain off and enjoy, like the Fast and the Furious or whatever. But I mean, there's also something to be said that about movies that make you think too, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
interesting. You leave kind of having a different perspective or thinking or ideology or a greater one. I think that those ones also have a lot to offer, especially.
I think that also goes back to the overall theme that like you and I had started. I don't know how we kind of networked our way to this point in the conversation, but I think we could easily loop it back to when we were talking about resolution as far as problematic behavior and stuff. That's what bothers me, I think, the most about these harmful situations that occur is like, I'm not seeing a consequence. I'm not seeing a resolution. I'm not seeing the end result. And because it's just open, arbitrary, and like potentially still harmful, I don't know that you're not actively still creating the harm. And like that bothers me so much. So I have learned so much about myself through this conversation. It's just like mind blowing.
And on that note, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. And
Perfect.
we'll see you next time.